It may come as a shock to you all, but recently I've been reading a lot of manga. I know. I am very ashamed. And to make up for this, I can at least share with you all the manga that I've been reading. Before we start, I was actually also able to persuade my editor to stay on. So everyone, welcome back, editor Colleen. This year, I actually set a goal for myself to read 16 different manga titles so I could get a variety of new genres, as well as help push me through my TBR. Since setting that goal for myself, I've just been breezing through that list, and on top of that, I've also just been reading more in general. I don't think it's helped either that there's been so many new releases at the beginning of the year. All of those things put together, though, equals me having read a lot of manga recently. So today, I just wanted to do a little chatty video talking about those manga I've read. Most of the titles I'm going to mention this time around are not ones that I've mentioned on the channel before, so I will be giving a full synopsis of each one. I'm also going to be giving my thoughts on each of these series, obviously, and not every single one is going to be about the first volume, so feel free to skip around if you don't want any spoilers on certain series. For the most part, I don't think I'm giving many spoilers to begin with, but if you just want to be cautious, I don't blame you. That's enough of the preamble though, let's get into what I've been reading. We're going to be starting off with a few digital-only titles. First of which is a very sweet slice of life read called Natsume and Natsume, which is available through Azuki. They were kind enough to have sent me the first volume available online, and I really enjoyed it. There wasn't a ton of plot, and the chapters were pretty short, but despite that, the characters were still very endearing. The story follows a scary-looking high school boy named Natsume Shiranui, whose smile sends chills down the spines of everyone he meets. While he looks terrifying, Natsume actually just wants to help people in need. He has always wanted to be a hero like his childhood friend, Natsume Minazuki, who he's looked up to since he was a kid. She's kind, she's fun, and she's brave. We see Natsume's daily life in high school as he tries to change himself for the better. Now, usually I'm not a fan of shorter chapter series, mostly just because it takes me a while to get invested, and shorter series usually have a harder time developing characters. However, Natsume and Natsume was able to get me interested in volume 1, which doesn't happen often. We actually got backstories in this volume of both of the Natsumes and why they're so attached to each other. An early explanation of their childhoods right off the bat was able to give them more depth, which hooked me into the series. At first, I did think that the girl Natsume was going to be a bit of the perfect popular girl stereotype, but she quickly becomes more than what she first appears. Her perfection just comes from boy Natsume's perception of her as his hero. It's kind of in that same sense of Kimi ni Todoke, where Sawako views Kazehaya as this like angelic being, but he's just a nice person. Boy Natsume puts her on a pedestal, but at the same time, girl Natsume admires him a lot as well. It'll be interesting to see where that dynamic goes in the future, especially when they start to add romance into the mix more. The first volume was a nice start to the series, but since the chapters are so short, I don't have too much to say about it just yet. I am glad though that it had a lot more substance than I was expecting, and the art was really lovely. Specifically the covers and the color art, because girl Natsume has this really pretty purple ombre hair. Her eyes are also just drawn more starry and glassy, and in the actual series, they're much more shaded in. Overall, a good beginning to a cute manga if you want something more relaxing and bite-sized to read. Next up is the shoujo manga, And Yet You Are So Sweet. This series just had volume 7 released from Kodansha, and since I was actually behind on this one, I read volume 6 and 7. And Yet You Are So Sweet is a much less talked about dessert magazine series. Dessert magazine is where like A Sign of Affection comes from, but it is pretty popular in Japan. The manga just got a live action movie adaptation and sells super well over in Japan, so I do find it strange how scarcely this one is mentioned. I do partially think that the reason that this one is not as popular is because the premise is so confusing. Instead of a fake dating trope, it's fake being in love. So like the characters will hold hands and they'll confess to each other, but it's fake. I'm getting ahead of myself, let me explain the plot real quick. Our main character, Maya Kisaragi, had a crush on a boy at school and finally gathers the courage to confess to him. Although once she does, she immediately gets rejected. Even worse, he goes onto social media to make fun of her confession, and now everyone at the school knows about what happened. While Maya is at her lowest, she meets the popular boy at school, Chigira, who proposes that instead of her giving up on love, she try having one-sided feelings for him. Maya says that she will never actually fall in love with him, but she does take Chigira up on this offer to pretend to have one-sided feelings for him. Up until volume 5 in this manga, we as the audience don't really know why Chigira had proposed this idea. I mean, it's a pretty wild concept already, but especially towards someone that you don't really know that well. However, we finally find out that Chigira was actually interested in Maya from the get-go. It's not a huge revelation considering the fact that it's pretty clear he had feelings for Maya in the last 2 volumes, but now we at least know why he proposed this idea. He wanted her to look his way the whole time. All the while, Chigira himself didn't even know he had feelings for her until they started to get to know each other better. All of this culminates with the two finally confessing to each other and dating for real. The progression to this confession felt very natural, and the relationship from there on was well worth the wait. For the rest of volume 6 and onto volume 7, we got great romance fluff between two people who just started a relationship. The romance was romancing, the fluff was fluffing. I think that's not... One of my favorite things of what I read, though, was Maya's initial hesitation on kissing. I could relate to it a lot because if you think about it a little too hard, it can be kind of weird, and especially for a high schooler who's never done it before. Her hesitation leads to a very cute interaction between her and Chigira, where he gives her that space to let her initiate it herself. It was a very sweet moment and always just reminds me of why I love the shoujo version of the romance genre so much. We also just get a lot of moments of them trying to figure out the boundaries in their relationship now, of like, oh, how close can I be? How not close can I be? Do you want me to be intimate at school? Do we not want to be? So that was just very nice and relatable to read for me 10 years ago. Volume 7 ended on a situation between Chigira and the second male lead brewing a little bit. It seems like an ex-girlfriend of some sort is coming into the picture and was a big reason why the two boys had a falling out. I hope this situation will help the second male lead move on from his feelings for Maya, as well as give some development in Maya and Chigira's relationship. I'm here for the drama after all. Last one on the list for digital-only titles that I'm going to be talking about is My Home Hero. This is a seinen manga that just got licensed by Kodansha pretty recently, so it only has 2 volumes out so far. It also has an anime that just started airing this season, but I'll talk about that a little bit later, and we'll get into the 1 volume that I've read of this series. Since this one was recommended by a couple friends of mine, I had high hopes for this one, and my hopes were already fulfilled. The story is about an ordinary man named Tetsuo who enjoys writing mystery novels in his spare time. One day, when visiting his daughter Reika, he discovers that she's been abused by her boyfriend. Wanting to protect his daughter, he ends up following that boyfriend, only to find out that he's part of the Yakuza and actually has a history of killing his other girlfriends. Tetsuo can't stand the thought of losing his only daughter, so to keep her safe, he attacks the man, ending up killing him inside Reika's apartment, where his wife comes in right at that moment to see. I think the series subverts a lot of my issues with those descent into debauchery type series like it. You know, like the Breaking Bad type of media where the guy starts off pretty normal and then keeps doing worse and worse stuff as the series goes on. Often the women in those types of series get sidelined as an obstacle for the guy, rather than like an accomplice or a teammate. That's what My Home Hero switches up immediately. The wife walks in and sees him and doesn't question much past whether it was self-defense or not. She simply realizes that it was done for her daughter and she goes, yep, all right, let me help you. That being one of the first things that happens in this manga really set me up to love it a lot more going forward. Volume 1 is mostly a setup for events of the rest of the series, but I was really enjoying what I read the whole time. We got to see a bit of these two parents navigate around the Yakuza with their smarts and intuition, while still being normal people at the same time. They aren't super geniuses, they're gonna make mistakes. They can't continually outsmart an organization that has thousands of dollars. So there's actually high stakes in this series. You're never sure who's going to avoid suspicion or when they're going to be found out. I was able to watch episode 1 of the anime, which just came out last week as of recording, and I wasn't super happy with the pacing they decided to go with. I do imagine it was much harder for them to do the cliffhangers like the manga does, since the chapters are a little bit shorter and they, have to fill runtime for a TV episode. Still, it was disappointing nonetheless. There was a lot of good about the series though. The voice actors fit the characters perfectly, and I really liked the music. The animation wasn't the best either, but the art in the series isn't like anything to write home about. So I can't really blame the animation studio. They're probably going to be focusing more on the story than the animation itself.
So that was a fucking lie.
Either way, it was adapting it pretty closely for the first episode, so I'm gonna keep watching, we'll see how it goes from there. My Home Hero is definitely going to be a fun drama thriller series to follow from here on out. I'm only right at the beginning, and I've only read the 1 volume. Volume 2 has just come out, so I get to read that soon, and I'm excited to see what happens. This wraps up all of the digital-only titles that I will be talking about. Next, we're going to move on to physical series. Although some of these that I'm going to be talking about do have physicals, I did read them digitally because I wasn't sure if I wanted to collect them just yet until I knew if I would like them or not. Spoiler alert, I ended up liking them. So while I don't have them physically, they are available in that format. For the physical manga I've read, let's kick it off with a shoujo title that I've been so excited to check out ever since it was licensed by Yen Press. Honey Lemon Soda! The shoujo manga that has been selling millions over in Japan has finally come to America, and Yen Press graciously sent me a copy. Currently, only 1 volume has been released, and in just that 1 volume, my expectations have been exceeded. I knew that this series came from Ribbon magazine, which is geared towards a much younger girl audience, so I wasn't sure if I was going to be that into it when I started reading. However, by the end of this volume, I have already adopted a daughter. The series follows my now adopted daughter, Uka Ishimori, who just started her first year of high school. For her whole life, she's been bullied by other people due to her nervousness in front of them and was nicknamed Rocky because of how she freezes up. On her first day, she gets sprayed by a bottle of soda, and due to this, ends up meeting a boy who has bright yellow hair named Kai Miura. Kai helps Uka come out of her shell and gives her the courage to be the outspoken person that she's always wanted to be. It's a pretty simple premise, but the character of Uka is just so heartwarming. I don't care how many times you give me a shy girl who just wants to break out of her shell, I will eat it up every time. Her determination to become someone that she is happy to be just makes you want to root for her every step of the way, whether that be in life, goals, or romance. You want Uka to overcome all her obstacles and be able to say hi to her classmates without messing up. By the end of volume 1, we still don't know too much about Kai just yet, but he is a really nice character. He kind of acts like Uka's mom sometimes, and always gives her the opportunities to speak when she feels too nervous to do so. I like his aloofness because it highlights whenever he takes action for Uka's sake. It just makes those moments that much sweeter. I'm sure he's got a lot more going on with his character, so it'll be fun to see what his deal is as we move further in the series. The first volume of Honey Lemon Soda was an absolute treat to read. If you're looking for a coming-of-age shoujo that is going to fill the gaps of something like Kimi ni Todoke, then this one might be your winner. It's still ongoing and doesn't seem like it's going to be ending anytime soon, so this may be another 30+ volume coming-of-age series. Either way, I'm looking forward to continuing this manga, and I believe volume 2 comes out relatively soon. And when volume 2 does come out, you know where you can get it. That's right, it's ad time, baby.
Attention, English speakers in Europe. Are you looking for English language manga?
Then check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have thousands of manga in stock with an inventory that's growing daily. Walt's offers low shipping prices for any EU country, as well as bulletproof packaging and speedy customer support. Enter the code Colleen's MangaRex at checkout for free shipping on your first order of 40 euros. You can get series like Honey Lemon Soda and many others at waltzcomicshop.com, your #1 source for English language manga in Europe. Listen, not all of my ad read segues are gonna be perfect. The next series I read was all of the currently released volumes of Ten Dance. This was one of the manga that I put on my list of series to read this year, and is also one of the ones that is available physically, but I only read it digitally. Ten Dance is a seinen BL series that I wasn't sure if I liked right away, honestly. I think it took me until volume 2 to really get into it, and then by the end of that volume, I was completely hooked. I think it was mostly because this series is about dancing that I was originally confused on the plot, but it gets a lot less confusing when you continue to read it. The story follows a Latin dancer named Shinya Suzuki and a ballroom dancer named Shinya Sugiki. Suzuki is a much more relaxed and carefree person when it comes to dance competitions, but he soon gets approached by Sugiki. Sugiki asks him to teach him Latin dancing so he can enter the Ten Dance competition, a competition where you do 5 unique ballroom dances and 5 unique Latin dances. At first, Suzuki declines, however, Sugiki goads him on to get him to accept his proposal. The two begin to learn a new type of dancing from each other, as well as a new type of passion. There's so much I loved about this manga, as well as some complaints as well, but for the most part, I love this manga. Both of the Shinyas are really interesting characters, and they have this amazing dynamic together. They both have very strong personalities and their own ideals, so they often butt heads throughout the series. Their ideals may be conflicting, but the more time they spend together, they realize that their love for dance is equal. They revel in the fact that they found someone who loves dance just as much as them, and begin to admire each other from there. More so Suzuki, who is less than pleased to be dancing with Sugiki though. On top of that, the romance. My god, is the romance in this series amazing. I am such a sucker for slow burn and pining. That's basically all this manga is, so it hit all the right notes for me. The ever-growing chemistry between both of the Shinyas was paced so wonderfully, and especially because it was very confusing for both of them to start realizing this chemistry that they have between each other at the same time. I had someone on Twitter mention that the series does give them kind of that "I'm only gay for you" vibe, which I do definitely see, but I think that this series might be trying to show that toxic masculinity is getting in these two characters' ways. They're often referring to how much masculinity means to them, and admitting their feelings for another guy seems to be something that they're scared of because they think it'll take that masculinity away. Also, I don't know, they're just really dumb and cringy dudes. They truly say the weirdest things sometimes in this series, and every time it happens, I just want to throw my computer screen out the window. They are the two corniest men on earth, and I don't know how their dance partners are standing off to the side and watching them interact without wanting to leave. Anyway, I can mostly ignore that because of how well the story is written, as well as the art. It's so dynamic and has this sensuality to it that really helps accentuate the dancer qualities of each character. There's a lot of attention to detail that highlights each dancing style from both Suzuki and Sugiki. Like, Sugiki's dancing style is ballroom, so he's much more strong, he's got a lot of more sharp features, while Suzuki's dancing style is Latin, so it's much more fluid. It just makes the dancing sequences that much more beautifully drawn. I really do just love this series, and I'm so happy I put it on my list of manga to read because I'm obsessed with it now. I'll probably end up buying the physicals for this one at some point, but it is a little more expensive series, so I'll most likely take my time with purchasing this one. At the very least, I will be buying volume 7 in physical, which I'm not sure when that's gonna release. I'll need to look that that up too. Alright, time to switch from a BL to a GL with the next series I read, which was Cocoon Entwined. This was another one that I read digitally because I wasn't sure if I wanted to collect it just yet. Since this one is going to be on the shorter end with 6 volumes in total, I'm pretty sure I'm going to pick this one up in full sometime soon. I am already double dipping though, so we'll see. Either way, this is another one that I'm very glad that I started reading. To be honest, the plot of this one may not entirely exist. It's kind of a cryptic series that doesn't really want you to know what's happening up front and doesn't really explain what's going on. Essentially, it's set in an elusive all-girls school called Hoshimiya Girls Academy. At this school, through all 4 years of attendance, each girl must grow their hair out without cutting it. Once they graduate, a ceremony is performed where their hair gets cut off, and the school keeps the hair to be sewn into the uniforms of incoming students. The inciting incident of the series is when the daughter of the Hoshimiya family cuts her hair off before graduation, which causes a rift in the academy. Despite the series being kind of plotless and confusing, that doesn't mean it's not good. There's currently 4 volumes out of the series, and it's mostly a snapshot of different lives of different girls in the school. It does bounce around from character to character a lot and can kind of be hard to get attached to some people because of this. The ones that have definitely been more fleshed out throughout these 4 volumes have been Yoko and Hana. They seem to be the main characters of the series for the most part, with Hana being the most interesting of the two. She's this character that is stuck in this princely aura and doesn't exactly like that she acts that way. I like the portrayal of her struggle of not being sure who she is and the fact that she pushes others away due to this fact. Because there's not much of a plot and more focus on character, you do get to appreciate the finer details of their personalities and what makes them tick, focusing on all the ways that the culture of this school has affected each of their psyches. While there's technically no competition or infighting, there is a bit of a hierarchy at this school that ends up putting other people down. You also have people being put on a pedestal at the school because of their hair length, their beauty, or their femininity. This is largely why the inciting incident for the entire series happens with the Hoshimiya daughter. She's sick of having to perform her whole life in this closed-off world that the school has created where time is essentially stagnant. My personal theory on what this manga could be about is the critique of femininity as this hyper standard in society. The focus on youth or beauty for girls makes you feel trapped in yourself and unable to be who you want to be. Going to a school that is all about that feminine performance is going to make you aware of how good you are at performing it or not. Those that are good at being feminine will rise to the top, but even they don't get to reap those benefits as they'll always be compared to other people. I could be entirely off though. Who knows? If it is right, I think it is a fun little juxtaposition between the 2 series I read, because you have toxic femininity in this series and then you have toxic masculinity in Ten Dance, and I read those 2 back to back, so that's just a fun little thing. Real quick, I need to mention the art in this one too because it is truly just so breathtaking. Every art spread could be in a museum or something. There's so much attention to detail in every hair strand that you could look from corner to corner of each spread and you would find something new every time. Even if you aren't a fan of this story, I feel like the art is well worth reading it still. Cocoon Entwined only has 2 more volumes left in the series to come out in English, so I'm very excited to wrap this one up, see where it goes. It's just a gorgeous series and I would highly recommend it. Last but not least was the recent release of Mermaid Scales and the Town of Sand. This was an all-in-one omnibus release of the coming-of-age josei manga in the Viz signature line. This one was announced last year and a lot of my friends were very excited for it, so I figured, why not? I'll throw that in my pickup list. Especially since it was a one-and-done volume, I love a no-commitment series. The story follows a middle school girl named Tokiko who has just moved to a rural seaside town with her father to live with her grandma. She feels a vague connection to the city and to the sea whose waves she hears everywhere she goes. Tokiko then recalls a memory from her childhood where she had almost drowned at one of the beaches in this city and was saved by a merman. However, she's not sure if this merman was reality or just a dream. Nevertheless, Tokiko wants to find out for herself, all on top of having to navigate her new life in this city. This manga was so beautifully crafted, and the story was amazingly well told. If I had to compare it to anything, I would say it's akin to a Studio Ghibli film with just the general vibe. I remember when I first bought it, I cuddled up on my couch that day, and because I'm a very slow reader, it took me several hours to read, and I just remember feeling so cozy while reading this. It was worth every minute of my day, and I was engaged from chapter 1 since the series kind of plays like a mystery as well. As the audience, we also aren't really sure if Tokiko actually saw a merman or not. We don't know if she's an entirely reliable narrator. There's a lot of mystery that surrounds the entire town, and we're not told until the very last 2 chapters what's even going on. We're very much stuck between dreams and reality, just like Tokiko is. The most beautiful part of the manga, though, is the message that it tells. There's a lot of metaphors with the seas and bringing change. The waves will roll in, destroying everything that was created, but what's destroyed can be rebuilt. Tokiko's family is going through a divorce, and Tokiko realizes that her mom does not care for her as much as she had hoped. Not having her mom in her life anymore obviously destroys her, but she's able to build a new relationship with her father since they had never been close enough prior. She knows so little about him, and now that she has closure with her mother, she can move on to building a stronger relationship with her dad. This is a spoiler for the ending, so skip this if you don't want to know, but there's also this message in Closure for Death. One of the boys in Tokiko's class that she has grown closer with has lost his brother at sea, and he never got to have that closure to know if he actually died or not. We do come to find out that his brother was actually the person who had saved Tokiko, and he ended up drowning. While Tokiko begins to blame herself for his brother's death, he stops her and says he's simply happy to know that he has closure with his brother's death and that he helped someone in his last moments. From there, he's able to build on these new relationships and not hold on to the past forever. Just an extremely poignant story. The art is also very stylistic. I really love the use of heavy black ink and shading in this series. It gives this sense of endlessness to the sea, which makes us as the audience uneasy while we're reading it. It also gives us that same sense of uneasiness that Tokiko is feeling because of her new life and family situation. Creepy monsters and eerie darkness are the culmination of her anxieties, but they're hauntingly beautiful. Since this is a 2-in-1 omnibus, I highly recommend you guys check this one out. I really wasn't expecting what I ended up reading, and it was just an amazing coming-of-age story. Like I said, any Studio Ghibli fan would definitely be a fan of this series as well. And with that, we have sadly come to the end of what I've been reading lately. Obviously, I have been reading more than this, but these are just the big highlights that I wanted to share with you guys this time around. I really wanted to try and read more genres this year that I haven't read as much of, like sports series, BL and GL series, and even like psychological stories. When I do one of these again, hopefully I'll have expanded my repertoire even further and gotten through, I'm gonna say 3/4 of my reading list. But that is all for me for today. Thank you, my hojos, for watching. Read Shihaya Furu, and I'll see you guys in the next video.